Hey everybody, this is Kennedy Hawk with another Mighty Marvel Minutes video. Today we're going to talk all about deck acceleration. So let's begin. What I mean when I talk about deck acceleration is burning through your deck as fast as possible. The last video talked about not holding cards from turn to turn, and one of the reasons you don't want to do that is you want to go through your deck and see all the resources you put into it as often as possible. Beyond just spending a resource, there's a lot of other things you can get by digging for your best cards or your combo pieces early in the game. One reason behind this is because there usually are best cards in our deck. All 40 cards weren't created equally and they weren't included into our deck equally, right? There's some cards that you build your deck around and some that you don't. So let's look at some things that help us accelerate to find these really strong cards, like Heroic Strike. So the first thing you should consider is your mulligan. I'm going to have a whole video on mulligans later, but mulligans are really important in Marvel Champions. Whenever I see people complain, oh, I just couldn't get set up in this game, I didn't draw into my pieces correctly, I ask them how many cards they mulliganed, and often they say one or two. And my answer to that is if you're not mulliganing for those pieces that are going to help you win the game and set up, you're doing yourself a large disservice. Let's consider Captain America here. Maybe he's got cards that he really wants to find. Maybe he's got Yarnbjorn in his deck, or maybe he wants to find those Super Soldier Serums to set up his Heroic Strikes. Well, he goes through 6 cards in his initial hand draw, and you're able to mulligan all 6 cards. So if you don't draw into one of those cards, you can pitch 6 more away, seeing 12 cards just from your mulligan. If you don't find your shield in those 12 cards, which maybe you wouldn't want to do with Captain America because of his setup ability, regardless, if you don't find that shield, you're going to be able to go fish that out as well. So you'll be seeing 13 cards in your deck between your mulligans and your setup ability. At the end of your turn, if you decided to stay in alter ego form, you'd see 6 more cards on top of those 13. So that would put you up to 19 out of 40 cards in your deck. At that point, you've seen half your deck by the end of the first round. So yes, your combo pieces could be cards 39 and 40, which would really stink, and that happens. But if you can get through half your deck in one round, you can usually find at least something that helps you. If half your deck is useless to you at the beginning of the game, that might be a sign that you should rethink which cards you're including in your deck. So I encourage you to think strong about your mulligans, and when you're searching for these combo pieces, mulligan really deep. Really hard. Next, let's talk about Mansion, the Mansion thing. Everybody loves Mansion. It's like the de facto deck accelerator. When the game came out, everybody included Mansion in every deck. Some people still include it in every deck, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Mansion's a really expensive card. That's the problem with it, is it costs 5 resources, right? Because the card itself plus 4, so that's basically an entire turn. And you're drawing 1 card a turn from it. So you do get 1 card back that turn that you played it, so that's awfully nice. So you've only got to survive 4 more turns with it on the board for it to pay itself off. And I don't think it has to pay itself off to be useful. There's a big difference between having a +1 hand size and your typical hand size. If your hero normally has a hand size of 5, and you can make that a 6, there's going to be a ton of things you couldn't do with a hand size of 5. And that's really neat and really interesting. So I really like Avengers Mansion because of that. The problem is that it's really expensive, and it's really easy to draw at the wrong time. If this is the piece you're looking for to set up your deck, and it is card 39, and by the time you've gotten to card 39, you've probably already either won or lost the game. So if something's going to have a big effect all the time you draw it, it needs to be a little bit cheaper so you don't need to get it early on to pay itself off. That being said, Avengers Mansion is still really powerful. If you play Avengers Mansion at a 4-player game, you can think about it this way. If all 4 of you get Avengers Mansion down the first turn, you can now make someone like Hulk, who has a hand size of 4, have a hand size of 8. Can you imagine playing Hulk if he had a hand size of 8? Some people would probably still complain, but he would be an amazingly strong hero because he'd be doing so many things. So getting Mansions down, especially in multiplayer, can be really strong, but even in solo or even in 2-player can really provide one player a huge boost. So that's one way to accelerate your way through your deck. Next, something that's available to everybody, Alter Ego form. Almost every hero, I think honestly every hero, except for once they're set up, I guess, has a larger hand size in Alter Ego form than hero form. And this is on purpose. The designers want us to think about flipping and providing ourselves extra resources. Alter Ego provides a lot of advantages. You get to catch your breath, you don't get attacked by the villain, things surge more often, so you might avoid really nasty treachery effects and surge into something that's more benign. Extra cards, always good. A lot of heroes also have extra card draw in Alter Ego form. Steve's apartment, Jessica, Drew's apartment, somebody else's apartment, because that's where you draw cards apparently. But regardless, you get the idea. There's a lot of support for Alter Ego form and drawing cards. The con is the villain's going to scheme. You're going to get threat placed on the scheme, and it's going to stink. So be prepared for that if you're going to use this as a counteraction or way to accelerate through your deck. That being said, it's still really strong, right? If you have a 40-card deck and you just cycled your deck, let's say, and you're in She-Hulk, you're playing She-Hulk. If you sat in hero form and drew 4 cards a turn, it's going to take you 10 cards to get through your deck. If you're drawing 6 in Alter Ego form, it's going to take you, like 6.5 turns, slightly less, and that's not including all the other card draw that's in her deck. So that's 4 turns you cut out of cycling through your whole deck. That's a huge boost. So don't sleep on Alter Ego form, but maybe don't flip to Alter Ego form when you're playing Galaxy's Most Wanted. Alright, next card, Spiritual Meditation. Everyone loves this card. It's amazing. It is trait locked, right? You have to be a mystic to play this, and a lot of those mystic characters aren't mystic on both sides, so you're kind of stuck doing this only in hero form, even though it's just an action. It makes an already strong trait type even more bonkers. Like, it's just insane. There's very little downside. I mean, you are accelerating, and all accelerators are pushing you to an encounter card and a reshuffling of your deck faster. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you want to shuffle cards that you played, the good cards from your discard pile, back into your deck. So it's a disadvantage because you get an encounter card, but it's also an advantage because you can get your good cards back. It doesn't offer any card advantage. You're basically spending 1 card, the card itself, to draw 2 and then discard 1. So you're getting rid of 2 cards and adding 2 cards to your hand at the end of the day. So you're not like gaining resources by it unless you find a double resource card or a power of, but you're doing really good deck filtering and deck fishing. You're looking for those combo pieces for the perfect cards to play to optimize your turn. And that's really strong. So pro for this card, it's mystic traded just by playing this card. Unless you put it into a card that doesn't have a mystic trait, or a deck that doesn't have a mystic trait, you're playing a really good character that's probably going to do really well. The con is it's mystic traded, so you have to play some of the strongest characters in the game to get this advantage. So not necessarily the perfect deck accelerator, but definitely an option. Next, Espionage Meditation. Wow, you can tell this used to say Spiritual Meditation when I made the slide. Espionage is a preparation from Black Widow's pack. It's a skill, it's a basic card, which is really nice. You play only if you control a spy. Good news, Mockingbird's a spy, and you should probably include Mockingbird in your deck, so you're pretty well off. But you could have this as a dead card in your hand if you don't have Mockingbird out, or if you're not playing as a spy character. It does require some luck for the encounter deck. It's only going to go off if something surges. So it says, interrupt when the surge keyword on an encounter card would be resolved. Discard Espionage, draw 2 cards. Again, you're not gaining card advantage from this because it costs 1 plus the card itself. It basically costs 2 to gain 2, but it allows for really good bursty turns. You can imagine things surge a lot when you're in Alter Ego form. So if you flip down to Alter Ego as She-Hulk and you had Mockingbird out, so you had 2 Espionages down, you draw to 6, something surges, you can trigger both of these and jump to 10 cards. She-Hulk can do a lot of work with 10 cards in her hand, but sometimes with 4 cards or even 6, she's got some less than stellar turns. So it really allows for strong bursts. It is a bit of a trap when playing it not with a spy identity card, just because it can be really painful if you draw all these early in the game and you don't have your spy allies down. That being said, there's plenty of spy allies, so look for that spy trait. It makes this card almost always a consideration if you're playing a sort of bursty deck. Alright, next, Assess the Situation. This is a card that some people say is garbage and some people say is liquid gold, and I say it is amazing. I am in the this is gold, put it in so many decks camp, which is really odd for me because I'm not a big fan of events for the most part. This pushes a card from one turn to the next. It says you get +1 hand size until the end of the phase. You draw up at the end of the hero phase, so if you had a hand size of 5, you would push your hand size to 6, you draw to 6 before the villain goes, and have all those cards for your next turn. It really allows the player to determine their hand size. You can imagine if you have this in your hand in Alter Ego form, there's nothing stopping you from playing this as a resource. So you can play with 2 turns of 6 cards, or you can play with a turn of 5 cards by playing Assess the Situation, basically removing it from your hand to make your next turn have 7 cards. And the same math works out in hero form. You could have 2 5 turns, or you could have a 4 and then a 6. And there's a lot you can do with a 6 that you couldn't do with the 5, and there's stuff you can do with the 7 that you couldn't do with the 6. That being said, there's something to be said that you're spending 4 in your first turn, so you're really doing this trade. You're trading cards from one turn to another, It allows for really, really high burst potential, and it's almost always playable, right? It costs 0. You just throw it out of your hand at the end of your turn, which you want to do anyway. One of the cons is it hurts deck thinning, right? I always talk about deck thinning, and I said this wasn't going to be a deck thinning video, but maybe I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But if you can imagine going through your deck twice in the game, if you eliminate 20 cards from your deck on the second pass through your deck, it's going to take you half the amount of time to get through your deck and see those great cards. Well, Assess the Situation throws more events in your deck, which are cards you can't thin from your deck. That being said, it still provides this burst and accelerates you through your deck, so it kind of acts like a deck thinner, even though it's an event card. At least I'm going to claim so. So I don't think the con is nearly worth even pointing out for the most part. But it's there. So Assess the Situation. I think it's great. Try it in your low hand size heroes. Try it in your high hand size heroes. Anytime you're holding a card from turn to turn, you would much rather be playing Assess the Situation, and your life would be better. All right. Last reminder. Always be drawing. There are a ton of cards out there that allow you to draw cards. Press the Advantage, Clear the Area from Rise of Red Skull. Both really good card draw enablers. I don't think it's worth just throwing a bunch of card draw in your deck. If you could include 25 cards that just draw you cards, that would be great. It would be really fun to play. It still might not be the best deck. You do want to include some strategic control and some sort of win condition within your deck, and drawing cards usually isn't that win condition. But just including a lot of these draw effects in your deck can really snowball you to victory. You can really go from having a hand size of 5 to having a hand size of 6, 7, 8, 9, or even 10 really, really quickly by including a lot of these cards. So when you see a card, I encourage you, when you see a card that has any kind of draw on it, think about whether or not it fits in your deck. And if it even possibly fits in your deck, try including it, play a couple games so that even if you go above 40 cards, go to 41 cards and include a couple draw cards in your deck, see how they work out for you. And if you really like them, cut something else and keep those draw cards, because accelerating through your deck is one way to accelerate to a victory. So thanks for tuning in. As usual, we got 2 more videos this week on Thursday and Friday. Have a great day and enjoy.